Welcome to Picture Perspective. My name's Jordan Kennedy, and today we've got the opportunity to deep dive into the automotive industry. We've got specialist economist Cameron Kirko and Steve Bragg, our motor vehicle specialist. Guys, let's get driving.
Thanks, Jordan. Glad to be here.
Thanks, Jordan. Great to be here.
Before we kick off, from a legal perspective, this is general in nature. This isn't meant to be personal advice. Should you wish to seek personal advice, please reach out to one of our team. So Cameron, Steve, the way I wanted to kick off today was to talk about how markets and motor vehicles interrelate. Cameron, talk to us on the effects of markets, specifically to motor vehicles.
So I think one thing that gets people really excited is the whole electric vehicle or EV space, and particularly how some of the leaders in that sector are doing. And what we've seen at the moment is, from a Western investor perspective, Tesla was really the flagship operator in that space, and they've really fallen on hard times where they're engaging in sort of sizable price cuts to maintain volumes, and they're facing an onslaught of competition, particularly out of China, from the likes of BYD, amongst others. And really what we're seeing there is a bit of, if you pardon the phrase, hopium in terms of their latest results, where there's really this articulation that they'll be able to produce like sort of a mass market vehicle and somehow salvage the still very, very lofty consensus expectations we're seeing there. Some of the other winners that have potentially surprised have been the likes of Toyota with their hybrid strategy. I think some people thought that was going to be a bit on the nose or not adequate for the energy transition, if you will, but they seem to be executing that quite effectively. Some of the other laggards that you probably don't hear enough about based here in Australia is probably the likes of your sort of traditional US operators like General Motors and Ford, where they've really gone hard on this big vehicle, sizable
monster
trucks,
yeah.
the Lightning, and the like.
Yeah.
And look, that's quite a good strategy for getting profit today, but the longer term prospects of some of those businesses are a bit more questionable. So the likes of Ford, for example, they're still losing sizable amounts of money on their electric vehicle production. So it's going to be a really interesting question to see how they make that transition.
Steve, thoughts?
Ford recently announced their EV losses, which was about 130,000 per unit. So it's not going very well for them. From a North America point of view, GM, Chrysler, Stellantis, Ram, they're all really struggling to get any traction with the consumer, primarily because the price differential between a traditional ICE vehicle and an EV is so vast, as well as all the infrastructure you have to implement either at your home, work, or charging networks, which the US is spending billions on. Primarily, you mentioned China. I think that's where it's all leading to. All roads are leading to China. They can produce batteries about 40% cheaper than anyone else, because they've got all the supply chains and all the basically every network going to that. So in particular markets, especially Western markets where there are like the Australia has the NVES, which is the new vehicle emission scheme, where there's a credit and a penalty regime in regards to petrol versus EVs. So what we're going to see, especially in a market like Australia, where there's only 1.2 million cars sold, new cars, and about 3 million used cars sold, with the penalties being implemented on ICE vehicles, the winners from a brand perspective are going to be the brands that can sell more EVs. To sell more EVs, you got to get the price parity down to where the ICE level is, because that's when it makes sense to buy one. Because they're cheaper to run, but not so cheap to run that you actually get that difference. So what we're going to see is the credits generated by the EV brands, or the Chinese EV brands, are going to offset the price increases for the petrol brands. So both the EV and the ICE vehicles being imported into Australia, race to the bottom, they're going to undercut everyone else.
Next question: are we ready for EVs to dominate, specifically in Australia?
Today, no. Infrastructure's not there. So as I mentioned, the U.S. is spending billions of dollars on infrastructure. It costs somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 per charger, the fast chargers, and it's about $3 million per charging site, which does about 6 or 7 of these chargers. The U.S. they've had a massive head start on Australia. They're well funded, billions of dollars they're throwing at it. Australia has at the moment committed $60 million. So Australia is more of a do-it-yourself sort of economy, and the government's expecting private and personal investors to actually do it themselves. So put
I put
solar
one in my house, right?
Exactly, solar and
Yeah.
charging your own house, get your own battery. But it's extremely expensive. So when you think about the price parity, so like a perfect example would be a Volvo C90. The petrol version is about 60, 70 grand. The electric version is about 100 grand. So you got about 30 grand's difference in
And then
price.
you sit there and going,
Yep.
is that petrol? Is that servicing? Is that, what's the difference sit? And
Pitcher
is it
Partners,
worth it?
yeah, we've actually run the numbers.
Oh, cool.
It takes 12 years to pay back. Most people hold their cars for 10. And the typical person might hold it for 5. So it's 2 ownership cycles before it actually pays back.
Next question, new Tesla owner over here.
Mm-hmm.
My only thought process that I went through in buying the car was, will it have a resale value?
Mm-hmm.
So Cameron, I know you're studying, the stats on the listed companies and how much, the secondhand market is working. What's the views on secondhand market for electric vehicles?
Tesla, there has been some comment by people, notably this CEO, that some of the technological side will actually add value to the car's resale prospects. But the reality from what I've seen so far in some of the resale data, that hasn't really been the case. It's mainly, the data that we do have is mainly US focused, but yeah, like ICE vehicles, the resale value tends to go down over time. And with EVs, you've probably got another dimension in terms of the battery replacement as well.
On the ground experience has been dealers can't sell these cars. No one's trading them in. They're all going to auction houses. So the perfect example is the Hertz example. They're losing $19,000 per unit. They recently just reported results. They lost $193 million selling 10,000 of these things. So they've really had to unwind this position. And as we all know, they went bankrupt during COVID. And the private equity firm came in, made this big grandiose announcement. They're going to buy all these 100,000. I forget how many of these things. They bought 100,000 Teslas. Tesla's share price went over $1 trillion. Hertz got 15 minutes of fame, and then now they're all paying the price. As you said, I think, or maybe you said, the battery is the biggest issue. The batteries last somewhere between 8 and 12 years, which again is the lifetime of a normal vehicle, or an average vehicle in Australia at least. But the issue is, what do you do with it? The battery itself costs 30 grand. The actual battery to install it costs about the same amount.
Awkwardly put in a vehicle, right?
Depends on the type of car. Like a Tesla, it's actually welded into the frame, so you have to take the car apart to put it in. Very difficult. Even ones that aren't built that way, the labor hours and the costs and the componentry and the fit out the factory you have to do so is very, very expensive. So typically they're written off. The car is literally not worth what it would cost to replace the battery. Where do we put these cars? I don't know.
The way we buy a vehicle, it's changing. Talk to us about, whether it's electric vehicles, whether it's, new vehicles through a franchise model or whatever. How's that evolving and how's that working on the favor of the seller and the buyer?
And I suppose the questions I had on that as well were really just thinking about the role of the dealership in today's day and age. So like Tesla, I know when they really became mass market and they were really trying to go with a direct consumer model, and that definitely has its drawbacks. And I think with what we've talked about just in terms of the challenges with EVs and their life cycle, if anything, it sounds like you might arguably need some kind of expertise more often than not. Like a direct model with the dealer might be quite tricky. And on that note as well, like it feels like we're still miles away from autonomous driving, which might have enabled that. Like Elon, or we could go to BYD. It's like, I just want something that'll take me everywhere, and you guys just deal with all the headaches, insurance, everything. You guys just deal with it.
100%. We're quite far from fully autonomous drive, and we're actually quite far from an electric vehicle that is built well. And that sounds crazy, but it's true. So the initial concern with electric vehicles is that they didn't need servicing. And the example is, I think on a Tesla website, it doesn't even mention getting
No, it
a
doesn't.
service.
Yeah.
You don't get a service. And,
Well,
and
they factor it into, they've got this price calculation now, which says how much fuel you're not going to spend, how much servicing you're not going to pay. This is what you're really paying, which I find an awkward pricing model, right?
I think that probably breaches a lot of standards in regards to advertising, if that makes sense. Because
Yeah.
I can't advertise my services on the basis that you'll save money,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Hey,
100%.
I'm giving you tax advice, or I'm giving you accounting advice or strategic advice, but it's going to save you X amount. And well, you can sell it that way, but you can't advertise it that way. But so the real issue, and we take a quick step back, and if you think about the franchise dealer network, the reason why it exists is because cars need to be serviced.
Yep.
So therefore, you needed a dealer somewhere near where you bought the vehicle from to get it serviced. So the reason why the idea came about going straight to agency or direct to consumer, D2C, is that you don't need that anymore. So you can have a central delivery point, and the car doesn't need to be seen again until it needs repaired, rather than serviced. But what we're finding is, which was quite interesting, we went to the United States, to the National Automotive Dealer Association conference, and they're experiencing extremely high recall rates, just really bad builds. So the brakes don't work, the door doesn't work, the window doesn't work, like really, and like it's so
Fundamental
so there
stuff,
are fundamental things you expect in a very expensive car that you purchased to operate as it's supposed to. So they're actually seeing more work out of the service department for EVs, which is the opposite of what they thought, but that will fix itself over time. So ultimately, the agency model or a direct-to-customer model may work if the build quality gets to the point where you
Gets
don't
to a
need to
premium
see
level.
the dealer.
Yep.
Now, the question you have to ask yourself as a consumer or someone driving this thing, like as I call it, a toaster on wheels, down a road going 100 Ks an hour, am I comfortable that no one has seen this mechanically for over a year? An annual check at a minimum needs to be done. I think the best way, and what we've been telling our clients from a dealer perspective, is even OEMs, we tell them as well, there needs to be a prepaid service component. So you buy the vehicle, embedded in the price is a prepaid service. If you own an electric vehicle, you won't go to the dealership because there's nothing wrong. When's the last time you went to the Apple store? But this is a bit different. You're packing your family into it, and you're driving down the road very fast. So you need to understand that this thing actually will work and it won't break down, or you won't have a catastrophic failure.
Let's pump the brakes. Thanks, guys. Some really interesting insights. As we can see, this is a really topical and evolving market. I'm sure we'll have you back on again, but really appreciate you coming in today.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Jordan.